Microloans gave Muhammad Yunus world fame and an international business conglomerate of more than 50 companies.
He's been of enormous service to the privileged and the powerful business and economic elites in Western countries. What exactly he's added to the livelihoods of the poor is another issue.
Good evening. We have today Professor Milford Bateman. He is in the Pula University in Croatia. He's kindly joining us. And Professor Milford is known in the whole world as an authority who has been doing research on microcredit for many decades. And he has written extensively on microcredit, and we will be showing a recent book of Professor Milford on the screen, which you can buy on Amazon. Anyone that you're interested in, you can buy it. Professor Milford, welcome to this interview.
Thank you very much.
So you have been doing extensive research on microcredit for many years and considered as an authority in this field. Why, in your opinion, microcredit is failing in alleviating poverty in countries throughout the world?
Well, it's really not an intervention that is designed to assist the poor, first of all. It doesn't deal with the power imbalances in society in the sense that the most important institution behind development is the state. And if the poor have no real method or way of controlling the state or getting the state to do things that promote development and poverty reduction, then they can't really do anything. Now, this started really in the 1970s and 80s with the neoliberal revolution, when people like Milton Friedman were saying that the only thing the poor needed to do was to engage in individual entrepreneurship. And in that way, they will get themselves out of poverty. They don't need the state. They don't need trade unions. They don't need cooperatives. They don't need to mobilize together. Just rely on their own individual energy, and then they will do good. And the only thing that was missing was a little bit of starting capital to be able to get this supposedly magical process underway. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But the main point to make is that the most successful economies in terms of development, growth, and poverty reduction are all those economies that have, in some form or another, a powerful state, whether at the national, regional, or local level, that can do the things that are required to eradicate poverty. And that is where microcredit is completely at odds with it, because the microcredit movement said we don't need the state, we'll let the poor solve their own poverty. And that, of course, as we now know, or we knew then, is a myth.
In your research paper, Rise and Fall of Muhammad Yunus, you have given extensive information on the successes and failures of Nobel Peace Prize winner Muhammad Yunus. In your opinion, why has his microcredit ventures in Bangladesh has not succeeded in alleviating poverty or improving lives of the poor people in this country?
Okay, well, the problem is that the whole idea that microcredit will spawn millions of individual micro enterprises, informal micro enterprises, and this, as Muhammad Yunus has said constantly, is the key to poverty reduction. Well, that's simply not the case. In the 1970s, Bangladesh already had a very large population of informal micro enterprises. In any poor economy, that's what the poor do when they can't get formal sector jobs. So there was already a population of these, and they were all pretty much struggling on very low incomes. Finding customers was difficult because nobody had any money, because that, of course, is the definition of poverty. So when you say, but I'm going to resolve poverty by giving people a little bit of money so that they go out and make more of the very same informal micro enterprises, and that will reduce poverty, well, there is a problem there. It simply doesn't make any sense. You have a village where you have, let's say, 2 individuals making tables, and he's saying that everybody, or at least a lot more people, can start making tables in the village with the help of microcredit, and everything will work out for them. Well, of course, we have, this is an old economic fallacy called the fallacy of composition, that you try to put so many more people into the same economic space and somehow they can all succeed. It just doesn't work like that. First of all, you get a lot of people starting a business and then failing. You get a lot of people starting a business and then going into great debt. You get a lot of people starting a business and then killing the other people who are already struggling in the same business. So you get one new business which might survive, but it kills the other one that doesn't survive. You also, because of the additional competition, you get pressure on prices, which is basically incomes and wages of these informal micro enterprises, to go down. So basically just flooding poor communities with even more micro enterprises is actually not the way forward. It's actually undermining the integrity and the development potential of the local economy. So that's the practical aspect. You get people, brilliant development economists like Ali Samsden, Ha-Joon Chang, are very clear that the informal micro enterprise is not a vehicle suitable for development. It doesn't transfer technology, it doesn't innovate, it doesn't export, it doesn't train its workers. In other words, all the things that we know are important to development and poverty reduction are not within the power of an informal micro enterprise to facilitate. In other words, it's all about survival, but not actually promoting development and poverty reduction. And as we see from the countries that have done something different, it is possible to do something different and make an economic success. But all the successful economies, none of them got themselves involved in informal micro enterprises. They were all looking at large, medium, or formal small and medium enterprises. That was the key. None of them experimented with micro enterprises. That certainly tells you something.
Until Danish investigative journalist Tom Heinemann made his documentary, The Microdebt, in 2010, there was a common perception in the minds of people who thought microcredit was doing a great job in alleviating poverty in many nations in the world. We have seen many world figures such as Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Queen Maxima, Queen Rania, and others praising microcredit. But Tom Heinemann's documentary has exposed microcredit enterprises were charging high interest from poor, which had been pushed the borrowers towards suicide in many countries. And we know some microcredit companies in South America, including Mexico, are charging exorbitant high interest from the borrowers. How the world can save these poor borrowers from the clutches of microdebt trap?
Well, the first thing to understand is that microcredit, as we are talking now, which is basically a private sector operation, a commercial operation, is entirely different from other types of local financial institution that I certainly would support. For example, credit unions, financial cooperatives, cooperative banks, municipal development banks. These types of institutions are about addressing poverty directly through all sorts of supporting measures, such as for formal SMEs and occasionally some micro enterprises that might have some use. But what we're talking about in terms of the Grameen Bank and the way the Grameen Bank evolved is purely a commercial operation. And as anybody knows, any commercial operation seeks to maximize profit, which is why they put interest rates at a level, not just to cover their own costs. If you read a lot of literature, they have to have high interest rates because they have high costs Totally accept that. They have high costs. Dealing with lots of people costs a lot, but that's not the issue, because they add on extra so that they can make many, many millions in Cambodia, in Bangladesh, in India, in Mexico, Colombia. They cover their costs, plus they make a huge amount of money on top, increasingly so. And the reason that, one of the main reasons they do that, perhaps not so much in Bangladesh, is because of foreign ownership. Foreign investors realized that microfinance was a way to get into the local communities that they'd never been able to get into before to make money. This was the bottom of the pyramid. They wanted to make money somehow from these poor people, but damn it, they couldn't do it. But with the onset of microfinance, they realized they could start to bring these poor people into the financial system, and they could start to take money out of it. And the principal method of doing it is, of course, to impose high interest rates. So that's why they needed high interest rates. But I have to emphasize that it is specific to a type of local financial institution, which is the commercial microcredit institution, such as Grameen and ASA and BRAC, and not institutions like genuine credit unions, financial cooperatives, and whatever. One last point I'd make on that is, initially, Professor Yunus was very much against cooperatives. He said they don't work, we don't need them, they're too much like communism or something like that. But later on, when he got into trouble, and there was claims of mismanagement of the bank, of Grameen Bank, etc., he said, well, it's not me, because Grameen Bank is the financial cooperative. It must be the women who are helping to manage it, who are on the board. Now, we all know that's rubbish, and those women were there, just placed there, just to give a veneer of respectability. Professor Yunus was calling the shots, and so it wasn't. Grameen Bank is a million miles away from being a financial cooperative, but it suited Professor Yunus at that time to say it was, in order to somehow hold his hands up and say, I wasn't responsible. It was these women who control the Grameen Bank because we're a financial cooperative. I have to say that was rubbish.